The funding for this video is provided by the amazing members of my Patreon. Also contributions from viewers like you. Thank you. Yeah, I started from PBS Kids. What you gonna do? Fight me? Anyway, roll the video. I feel like the cosplay community is trying to act like having bad financial literacy is something that is cute, quirky, and funny. And it's not. Like, at a certain point, I think we need to have a discussion. I feel like people get too wrapped up in this community and this hobby, and it leads to them making very poor financial choices that take them a long time to get out of. And when I say they get wrapped up into this, they get like that excitement. They get that boost in happiness when they do these things, when they're in these spaces. But later on down the line, you do realize that you're gonna have to make up all that money that you just threw away that you needed for something else. Because while you're having fun at that con right now, your stomach is growling extremely hard. That is not okay. Okay, if you're trying to figure out why I'm dressed like this today, I'm actually filming another video after this one about the video game called A Date with Death. And basically the main character is a dude that wears dark clothing and has white hair. So that's the look we're doing today. But for some reason, this is giving Gojo on his day off. I don't know. Hey y'all, it's Harriana and I'm back with another video. Hi, hello, how are you doing? My name is Harriana. Welcome back to The Pirate Ship, also known as Harry Hook's Pirate Ship. I'm the captain. You are not my first mate. I don't got the first mate. Because you want to know why? Bring your ear closer to the speaker so you can hear me clearly. No one's worthy to be the first mate. But hi, hello, how are you doing? My name is Harriana, and I like to make content based on nostalgia and family and children's entertainment and all the issues that I find within those spaces. I'm going to be completely honest. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I have been wanting to have a discussion about money, conventions, and cosplay and the lack of financial literacy that we have in this community. This might go for an hour, this might be 30 minutes, I don't know. I did a survey about a month ago where I asked people honest questions about money, cosplay, conventions, and some of these replies, they make me a bit sad. And I'm not judging anybody. I told people that this was a judge-free zone, mainly because I think we need to have a very, very honest discussion about how we have neglected our well-being for the sake of this hobby. Before we move over, if you guys saw on my community tab, I'm trying to help out my friend Ahmed. He is Palestinian and dealing with a lot. He just wants to protect his family. I will have the link to that down below for any of you guys who are interested. But I do think that you should read up on what is going on in Gaza. Before moving any further and before even getting into the survey, there are just two important things about this that I most definitely want to touch on. And the first one is this long ass disclaimer that I wrote here on my notebook. And then the second one is an elephant in the room that I have just noticed with my experience in this space for so long. So, disclaimer, and I'm gonna read it word for word off the paper because I can do that. Disclaimer, we are having a nuanced discussion about this because I know y'all, as in the cosplay community, have very binary thinking when it comes to the problems that we have in this space. At some point, we need to talk about the unhealthy and harmful things that have happened in our community that a majority never want to address. I hear stories all the time of 10 people sharing one tiny room in a luxury hotel, avoiding bills to be able to go to a con, stealing from artists in the artist alley, sleeping in cars and overnight parking decks. The list goes on. All of this should not be normalized. There needs to be some type of financial literacy going on because it's not here. And there was one more thing that I want to address because I already know somebody is going to leave this comment. I already got this comment on Instagram where I briefly brought up how people in the cosplay community don't take care of their bills first before going to a con or buying a new costume. And I had that similar response over here on YouTube Shorts where people are talking about, why do y'all care so much if people are not paying their bills to go to a con? Why do y'all care so much about people spending all of their money on a new expensive cosplay? Why do y'all care so much if other people aren't paying bills and aren't eating and are doing dangerous things for cosplays and cons? This is telling me that y'all don't know what community means. You are supposed to care about the people that you are in community with. Got that? So we talked about how when it comes to pretty much any type of subculture, you're gonna have to spend money at some point for whatever it is, and people try to do the most cost-effective ways of it. But there is just something that I want to address with the cosplay community and just the nerdy fandom community in general. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is free to low cost events. Y'all act like y'all too good to go to them. Y'all act like y'all are too good to go to them. Y'all act as though that $10 local con in your area or that free cosplay event is beneath you. There's a phrase that I have been saying a lot more lately called keeping up with the Joneses, and that is what a lot of people in this community like to do. They like to keep up with the Joneses. They like to go to the most expensive conventions that are in the most expensive cities. They want to be in these buildings that have so much spotlight on them, and it really makes me question, do y'all actually enjoy this hobby, or are you just trying to go viral on social media? There are so many free local low-cost events that are in people's areas, especially because fandom has become much more mainstream than what it used to be. Every other weekend in the area that I live in, there is some type of cosplay event going on. There is some type of nerdy event going on. There's some type of trading card event going on. There's such a gaming event going on. There is some type of nerdy fandom style event happening. And I even seen cosplayers complain about this on Instagram before. And this one person, she even got ate up for it. I feel like y'all are cricket. Hold up. But there are just so many cost-effective ways to be involved with fandom, and people just kind of ignore them because they feel like they aren't getting anything in return for it, and so much of that is clout. But that is something that I just really wanted to talk about, because there are ways that we can have fun here and do them in ways that are going to break our account. Because for those who follow me on Instagram, y'all see that I be doing something nerdy every so often. I be involved with some type of fandom thing every now and then. And a lot of those events that I go to are, one, local, and two, they barely cost me anything to get into them. Like, I always tell people to take advantage of the free, fun, little nerdy things in your area, because that little bit matters. Because I remember I saw somebody say this one time when they were talking about, y'all over here talking about paying $200, $300 for DreamCon, but your local con that costs $15 to get in, looking at you like. But yeah, I'm just like, it may not be the type of thing that you want, and they may not be offering every single last thing that you want, but the small events do matter. The free events do matter. These small little things do matter, because that is community. Y'all know this channel will always be having camera difficulties. I don't understand why, when I feel like I get it right one time, it's messed up the next. But anyways, so for those of you guys, as I mentioned earlier, I put out a survey on my YouTube community tab. I put it out on Threads, and I put it out on Instagram, basically talking about cosplay conventions and money. And I even shared it in a cosplay Discord server that I was in. I told everyone that this survey was anonymous, because I wanted people to be as truthful as they want without feeling embarrassed about the things that they have done when it comes to wanting to enjoy this space. And I will be honest about my financial choices here just as well, because I don't want to come off as hypocritical or nothing like that. But mind you that a lot of these bad financial decisions were things that I've done years ago, and I have just been a lot more wiser when it comes to my money habits now, mainly because I've just gotten older, but things in my life have changed. One of the major reasons why I decided to do this survey and what gave me this idea is because I feel like money was something that I didn't talk about too much in the video called Y'all Are Making Cosplay and Conventions Insufferable. That was more so focusing on the behaviors and attitudes of the people in this community, with the exception of money being involved in those things. Like, money was brought up at certain points of that video, but we didn't go into depth about all the questionable and kind of concerning things, honestly very much dangerous things that people have done for the sake of conventions. So that is why I wanted to make an entire separate video on that. So if you feel like there is something important that I did not talk about in this video, that's because I most likely talked about it in that too long video. When I say too long video, because it was 2 hours long, you're gonna have to watch it in doses, but I will have that link down below. Now let's continue. Getting about 97 replies to this survey, and for the cosplay community, I'd say that is quite a lot of people, because our community is not that big as people think it is. So the first question I asked was, have you ever been broke after a convention weekend? 39% said no, but 60% said yes, which wasn't shocking to me whatsoever, because I too have been broke after a convention weekend, and that mainly is because I just saved up my money for that weekend right there. And usually after a con, I don't really be having much going on. After a con, it's just me getting back to work. I don't be going to cons back to back to back, mainly just because I just don't have money to be spending like that. It's not necessarily a surprise, but also now the times have gone by, I've noted if I have something important that following week, like if I have a bill due, oh, I'm gonna make sure I'm much more wise with my spending choices that weekend. Which is what the second question of this gets into, where I asked, have you ever struggled to pay your bills after a convention weekend? And 80% of people said no. I'm actually glad that the majority of people that filled this out said no. That 19% said yes. And this is just such a scary situation to be in. Like I said, this is a judge-free zone. But like I said, if I know I have something that needs to be paid after I go to a con, I will do much better about my spending habits that weekend, because I don't want to be having something cut off after that. Or I don't want the debt collectors following me and all of that. Like, this is just kind of like a scary situation to think about. And I'm gonna be honest, the reason I asked this question is because usually after a major con, and when I say a major con, I usually mean like a mid to big size convention that a lot of people rave about, there would be there'd be quite a lot of people online talking about how they need help paying their bills because they went to this convention and they spent a little bit too much money. We're gonna talk about that a little bit more later. Now, when it comes to conventions, a lot of people like to go to cons that are local to their area or that are nearby. And a lot of people like to travel to conventions that are out of town, out of state, out of country even. Because I've met some people that came from the UK to the US for a con. I met some people that came from Canada to the US for conventions. I know of some people that went from America, like from the US. They've gone to cons in the UK. I know people from the US that have gone to cons in Canada. So traveling for a con isn't something that is taboo. I've traveled for cons before. I have not traveled for con this year, by the way, because I just, one, have just been super duper busy with working with Shockwave Animation, and that has just taken up so much of my time. And two, I'm just kind of in a position right now where I need to be saving my money and really can't be spending it on big grand trips like that. So I asked the question, how many out-of-town cons do you typically go to in a year? And I'm gonna be honest, the majority for this answer was none. And I think that just goes to show you how this is kind of like a loud minority. Like, people that travel all the time for conventions, that is just not the big normal thing for people in the cosplay community. I know of people that say that they don't go outside of cons that aren't on the Southeast region. I have yet to not go to a con that isn't on the Southeast region. I know a lot of people say they only go to cons that are in their state. They have driven out of town, but they have not left the state for them. And usually the next biggest response that I got to it was 28 26% of people said they usually only go to one con out of town a year, which, yeah, I know so many people that literally only come to one con in Atlanta that year, and that is like the only out of town con that they go to. I know a lot of people talk about Anime Expo is like their only out of town con that they go to that year. I know some people say that Anime New York is their only out of town con that they go to this year. 9% said they go to 5 or more out of town cons this year. And I'm gonna be honest, that's not something that's uncommon, because I know of a lot of people that travel for conventions, like especially when it comes to the people that work as vendors and artists at these events. They're always traveling to cons. I know so many of them have traveled to like probably 10 out of town cons in a year. But on average, for like the regular everyday person, they usually don't go to a con out of town, or they either go to one con out of town. So we're traveling out of town for these conventions. Where the hell we gonna stay? Who we gonna stay with? That is something else that a lot of people need to talk about. I try not to be super duper judgmental with this, but y'all, please, please, pretty please try to get to know the people that you are going to be rooming with. I think that is so important. Please try to get to know the people that you're rooming with. That is just a safety, because I did room with some of my friends for MomoCon, and that mainly was because I had overnight panels and I was not about to be driving back and forth at home, and I pretty much knew everybody that was staying in that house. There were some people that I didn't know too well, but I did get to know them a little bit, and I made sure I had my personal space and all of that. But that is just a safety thing. Please get to know the people a little bit that you're gonna be like rooming with. So I said, when you travel for a convention, do you usually room alone or do you room with someone else? I have done both before. I have roomed alone and I have roomed with somebody else. A lot of people usually tend to room with somebody else because it saves money, but also a lot of people don't like to go to conventions by themselves, which is reasonable. 61% of the participants for this survey say that they usually room with somebody else. Not shocking, because these hotel rooms be expensive. The price of Airbnb just keep going up more and more every day. And only 10% said that they room by themselves. Not shocking. And then the other 27% just never travel for a con. I felt like I had to have that option there because of the response that I had before, where people said that they did not travel for a con at all in a year. Because I know a lot of people that do live in or near major cities, they usually go to those conventions, but they drive back and forth back and home because they don't want to spend the money on a hotel or Airbnb due to convention center or the hotel. Now we have to get into like the typical cost of things. I don't know why this is bothering me so bad. Like, I just keep feeling like y'all are freaking cricket. I'm sorry if y'all watching this video and y'all are cricket. I apologize. And when we get closer to the end of the survey, there was something that was said that is what gave me the push to make this thing, because I've already made a video talking about recession indicators fandom edition, about how certain things are going to be changing in this space, how people are going to be spending less money in the artist alley, people are most likely going to not be buying ready-made costumes, and they might start thrifting a little bit more. But it was this one thing that made me go, this will literally make everything worse. It sounds good in theory, but overall, it will cause major issues. And why I say that question for the end is because of the questions that I asked for it. So the next one we have is, how much money do you typically spend during a con weekend? And I said this excluding badge, hotel, Airbnb, travel. Like, let's exclude all of that stuff when it comes to actually being there and getting into the con. How much are you actually spending that weekend? The average amount of money that people say they spend during a con weekend is between $100 to $200, which makes sense. Which definitely makes sense, because people want to buy things in the artist alley, but people also need to eat. People need to eat. They need to be able to travel back and forth from wherever they're staying, because if you're staying in the Airbnb and it's not in walking distance, you got to use Lyft or you got to use Uber. So $100 to $200 that weekend makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And after that, a lot of people said that they spend between $200 to $300 that weekend, which also makes quite a lot of sense depending on which city that you're in. After that, so many people said that they only spend between $60 to $100, which understandable because a lot of people that go to conventions don't really stay anywhere nearby. They sometimes drive there, they pay for the parking, and they usually just go in there to buy in the artist alley and then leave. Only 3% of participants that filled out this survey said that they spent over $500. So that led me to my next question, where I straight up asked people, what do you usually spend your money on when it comes to a convention? And not surprised, 93 of the participants said they spend it in the artist alley in the vendors hall, which is not bad whatsoever. That's one of the major reasons why I like going to cons in the first place, because I love art. I've said in the past that I am an art hoe. One of my favorite reasons for going to cons is going and seeing all of the artists that are there. I love art. I very much appreciate it. I think art is something that needs to be paid for. But also because I like to buy art, I also have to be a little bit more particular and on my ass about how much I spend on art. So 93% of participants said that they spend money and the artist alley in the vendors hall. After that, 83% of participants say they spend a lot of their money on food. And I'm gonna be honest, even when I travel for conventions and all of that, food isn't usually the thing that I spend a lot of money on. And I think it's because I just have a lot of issues like with my appetite in general like that. But a lot of the conventions that I go to like nearby, I just like bring snacks, come and go, but people gotta eat, so it makes sense why that is one of the major things that people spend a lot of money on. We gonna bring that up again later. Put a pin on that. 30% of people said that they spend quite a bit of money on Uber rideshare in general, which yes, I remember one year where I had to keep Ubering back and forth. That took up a big chunk of my money that weekend, which I understand because depending on the location of a lot of these places, sometimes it is just less of a hassle Ubering back and forth instead of driving there and driving around for 30 minutes trying to find a parking spot. The next is alcoholic drinks. That is what a lot of people spend their money on, and I'm gonna be honest, they be scamming y'all. They be scamming y'all. I be seeing the prices of them drinks and I just be like, did they charge y'all that much to put this little bit of liquor in it? Like, ooh, they be scamming y'all with them drinks. Autographs is another major thing that people spend money on, which yes, and depending on the voice actor, these autographs can range from $30 to like $80. And depending on what you want in the mix, the price just keeps going up and up and up. I ended up getting Tiki autograph, like y'all know Tiki from Miraculous Ladybug, and I'm pretty sure I spent like $60 on that thing. And I was fine with that. Like, I love Tiki. She's one of the few characters in Miraculous Ladybug that ain't never got on my nerves that bad. I mean, Tiki pissed me off like bad like a few times, but I love Tiki. Like, that was something that I did want to spend money on. When nobody forced me to spend money on that, but also the reason I bought that $60 autograph is because I knew I had the money to get it. There were some actors that were charging similar amounts, but at that time I didn't have the money to spend like that. By the way, her name is Mela Lee. I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all are familiar with who Mela Lee is. She's been in so much stuff. The most recent thing I know she's been in is Date Everything. But yeah, I wanted Mela Lee's autograph. I paid that $60. And other things that people say that they spend their money on, they spend their money on photo shoots, which yes, I have done. I have a really good photographer that I usually book every time. And people say that they also spend their money on party tickets. But I'd say out of everything on this list of things that people typically spend their money on during a con weekend, party tickets was picked the least. But Artist Alley and Vendors Hall was picked the most. So I wanted to actually get to know what these people were spending their money on. Like, please let me know how you ended up getting to that much. Because I know a lot of people talk about how one time they ended up spending so much money during a con and they didn't understand why until they went back and did the math and had to be a little bit more particular about their spending, which is why I recommend people carry cash when they go to cons because it's easier to watch it. Did ask the participants, what was the most money that you spent on a con and why? And I'll go ahead and talk about it myself. The most money that I probably ever spent on a convention was probably about like $300. And that was mainly because I just kept having to Uber back and forth. And that took up a lot of my money. And I'm not talking about like, you know, plane ticket, hotel, Airbnb. I'm just talking about actually being there during the con weekend. 300 of that money went to Lyft. And mind you, I only did that because I knew I had it at the time. Like, I get mad thinking about how I use that much money on Lyft, but also at the same time, I'm like, it's okay, girl. I'm gonna sit and read you guys everyone's responses, and then we'll be back. About $600, $700. Hotel, parking costs, Lyft, Uber, con ticket, money for food, alcohol, parties. This excludes what I paid for my ticket. Probably $600 because it was my birthday. How to spoil myself, haha. And I also paid $200 for an autograph with Hayden Christensen. I have been saving for the trip in advance, though, as it was going to be after I graduate and before I started a gap year to pre-med. A last hurrah, I guess. $292 for a photo opportunity with John Cena. Bought art for $300. I spent $600 on hotel food at New York City Comic Con when I was accepted as a panelist in 2022. My badge was free, but I did not have someone to stay with, so I pucked up $600 for a hotel. Since that experience, I only go to New York Comic Con if my badge is comp and if I can stay with a friend. It's the only con I travel out of state for. The most money I've spent at a con was around $400 to $500 at MomoCon 2022. This was due to me being new to the cosplay con scene as well as drinking, partying way too much. When I think back, I believe it was uncompensated behavior for the lack of community loneliness, impulse control issues, and anxiety I felt at that time. I haven't spent over $200 at a con since then, and that includes merch, drinks, food, etc. I always budget so I can buy next year's badge at the con to save money. $1,000 for vending at a con. So I paid for my plane ticket, Lyft, hotel, and food along with the table months prior. A crochet plush turtle. It was handmade, so the money was worth it since it was made from the person's hands. I spent the most on voice actors because I deeply admire these people behind the characters I love. $500. I love supporting artists and they tend to have the fandoms I love with are rare. I can't recall the exact amount, but Katsucon is always the most money because of traveling and staying at the Gaylord Resort, plus photo shoots because the locations are amazing. I also bring my biggest cosplays there, so I have to spend big money on that just as well. GalaxyCon. Over the years, it has gotten more expensive. On top of it, it usually is during the summer in the middle of the city, and it makes prices higher for the tickets and food. The most money I spent for a con so far has been C2E2 2025. I wanted to see Neil Nilbon and Laura Bailey. I think for the Airbnb, gas, parking, valet, autographs, photos with celebrities, ticket after parties, and all that came up to $1,500. Most of my tax return. I went a little over budget because my travel mates didn't factor in toll roads and parking like I did, so I wound up spending the money I reserved for Artist Alley on parking. I also spent a little more for food. C2E2 has plenty of good food spots, but I also have dietary restrictions where greasy and fried food is a no-go. So it was a struggle to find healthy alternatives without leaving the convention center, and I paid more for it. $700 for a hotel room because my original party had ditched me at the last minute and I couldn't cancel. I had a non-refundable plane ticket, a panel to run, and I couldn't find anyone to room with at the last minute that would fit my criteria. I think about $120, but I mostly spent that amount because it was my very first con and I was just very impulsive with my purchases. DreamCon. Hotel prices were indeed up there in price, but split the room with the finance, keeping in mind that I was paying for the convenience of being attached to the con center. But I knew it wouldn't break the bank. Mainly the hotel. I was able to budget everything else. Approximately $400 for a photo shoot with a famous cosplay photographer. The reason I asked that question is because I don't think a lot of people tend to realize how much money fandom can take from us. Like, fandom is like a free hobby, and we're being honest, you really don't have to spend no money to be a part of fandom. But when you want to go to a lot of these IRL fandom spaces and interact with these cast and crews and all of that jazz, it costs you a pretty penny.
Say
Now let's talk about the one thing that I saw that made me want to make this video. Somebody that I follow, I'm actually mutual with them, she's a sweetheart, but she said something and I was like, that's a good idea, but now that I sit and think about it, that might actually be bad. People were talking about using Klarna for badges, like badge tickets, getting into cons. People were talking about how, what if they started offering Klarna for our favorite conventions? And I was like, that sounds all right. And then once I sat and thought about how y'all are not paying Klarna back their money, and that's why they're in a big ass lawsuit at the moment, that could go wrong in so many ways. So that's the reason why I wanted to go ahead and get an idea of how many people in this community actually do use buy now and pay later services. And I'm gonna be honest, I do use buy now pay later services, and this mainly is just for things that I know I will be able to pay back. I only use buy now pay later services when it comes to things with my business, and a lot of that is usually me buying like mailers and stuff like that to make sure I get everything shipped out to everyone. I used to use buy now pay later a lot more, like when the pandemic like first started and like the first few years of that, and that was just me like buying nonsense, like just buying food that I didn't really like need and I could have just stayed by and stay home and cooked, buying like perfume, buying like clothes. Like I was just spending money on nonsense with buy now pay later just simply because I could, and I don't do that anymore. I just simply leave buy now pay later when it comes to like business expenses and I know I actually have the funds to pay back. I'm very big on not taking out a loan that you know you cannot pay back, because I look at a lot of these buy now pay later offerings and they're like, okay, you pay this $20 fee for 4 months, which is fine. But some of these people buy now pay later be over here like $200, $300 that they have to pay a month, and they know they can't afford to do that. Never take out a loan that you know you can't pay back. And I learned that early on. I learned that when I was younger. I learned that like when I first started like making my own money, when I started working, that is just literally a decision that will literally fuck you up for so long. And by the way, I feel so strongly about this video is because I am somebody who was affected by somebody in my family that had really, really poor financial decisions, and it literally affected my life. That is why I care so much about this subject. But yeah, I should have asked y'all, have y'all used a buy now pay later service before? 60% of y'all said yes and 39% of y'all said no. A lot of people use buy now pay later services, but that isn't like the overwhelming majority. I've been seeing more and more people talk about how they are extremely opposed to them because they're just like, if I don't have the money to pay for it now, why the fuck would I buy it? Which is smart thinking. And when it comes to the subject of buy now and pay later, people use it for like different things. Like I said, I was just using this shit on nonsense, but there was a time where I did use buy now pay later for some medication that I need. And it was over-the-counter medication, by the way. So these are the things that people said. 23% of people said that they have spent buy now pay later for food. 23% of people have said they have used buy now pay later for makeup. 61% said they use buy now pay later for clothing, which wasn't shocking because I told y'all that I used to waste so much of my money using buy now pay later services with clothes. 43% of people said they use buy now pay later for cosplay, which is not shocking as this literally is a cosplay community survey. That's the reason why I put that there, like, hey, have you used buy now pay later service for a new costume? 43 said yes. 51% of people say that they use buy now pay later for business supplies and inventory. Like I said, that is what I only really use these services for now. 38% of people say that they have used buy now pay later for electronics, which makes sense because we need a phone in this society. You don't need the newest up-to-date phone, first of all, but you do need a somewhat up-to-date functioning phone nowadays. Like, I just hate the way that things are. They make technology sucky as the years go on because they want people to keep making money for that. And that's not uncommon. I know a lot of people who used to have a payment plan when it came to their phone. I had a payment plan for one of my phones, and when I finally had the money to pay that whole thing off, I did that. 33 said they use buy now pay later for a hotel or Airbnb. How are y'all getting buy now pay later for Airbnb? Because I've never gotten it. Like, I've always had to straight up pay the whole price. But anyway, 23% of people say that they use buy now pay later for plane tickets. 12% said that they use it for skincare. And 5% said they use it for medication. I am one of that 5%. And as we know, life happens. And because of that, sometimes you're not going to be able to go to the convention that you bought a ticket for. Things happen, life happens, whatever. Sometimes people are not able to financially afford to go to the convention, which is a smart thing. If you can't afford it, please don't try to force yourself to go. People usually will sell their badge to somebody else that needs one, is going to the con, doesn't have one. Like, it's not a thing. But I actually was surprised to see how low this one is, because I'm like, if y'all can't go to the con, do y'all just not like sell your badge to somebody else? I don't know. But I asked, have you ever sold your badge or given it to someone else because you no longer had the money to attend? 88% of people said no. And not really like have done that. It's just very much I wasn't going anymore for the rest of that weekend, so I just gave my badge to somebody that was going. Now here is the major question where I was just talking about how I feel like a lot of people put themselves in jeopardy when it comes to this hobby. As I mentioned earlier, how people were struggling to pay their bills after going to a convention, and I'm thankful that that is not the majority. I am thankful that this isn't the majority just as well, but it still is a problem that I do think needs to be talked about. Have you ever gone without eating during a con weekend at some point because of financial constraints? 73% of people said no, and I'm actually glad that the majority, and I wouldn't say the majority, but overwhelming majority of people who filled this out said that they have not avoided meals because they didn't have the money to for the convention. And I know a lot of people were talking about they do budget when they go to conventions, but we're going to talk about later. But they say that they're just like, oh no, I'm not skipping eating because I don't have that much money. I'm going to figure out how to work my money. But 26% of people have said yes, that at some point they did not eat during the con weekend because they didn't have the money to. And the reason I put this question in is because I know a lot of people were like joking about it and talking about how they were so hungry at a con, but they spent all their money in the artist alley that they weren't able to eat. And I know we want to support small businesses, but also at the same time, I think we need to do a little bit better about our well-being. Like, yeah, I want to support this artist. I most definitely do. But if I know I have $50 that day and I want to support the artist and I also know that I need to eat, I'm not going to spend all $50 in the artist alley. I'm going to be wise about who and what I buy over there, but then make sure I eat. Now, this is the one where I had to ask a lot of questions because I was just curious. I was like, how are we eating during con weekends? Now, one con I know I went to where I was out of town and I was by myself, I went grocery shopping as soon as I got in town. I went grocery shopping as soon as I got in town, and that's how I ate that weekend because I just was not in the mood to try to figure out how to get food in that venue. I was like, I'm gonna have groceries, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna eat like that. A lot of times, usually when I have conventions local, I usually wait till I get home or I bring snacks and stuff like that before I eat. Mind you, I do not like to stay super duper late at cons. I don't be staying until the wee hours in the morning. Once I am done in the evening, I dip. And sometimes it just be the afternoon. Like sometimes when 6 o'clock hit, I be gone. Usually when it comes to con food, it's overpriced and people don't want to pay for it, but you still have to eat. So if you didn't have the money to purchase food, how did you eat that weekend? And 36% of people said they brought their own lunch, which is common. I see people bring their own lunch all the time at conventions, and I applaud you. Thank you for taking care of your health. And I know a lot of people like have certain dietary restraints. I know people have allergies and things like that. It's the safest thing for them to do. So I remember even when I used to work on set, I used to bring my own lunch sometimes because I don't know what, sometimes I did not trust them when they cook their seafood. I know a lot of people were talking about how they waited till they got back to where they were staying for that weekend to eat, which yeah, I've done that too before. I know a lot of people were talking about how their friends have bought them something to eat during a con, and I have done that before, where a friend of mine did not have money for food and I ended up buying them something to eat because I'm not about to let my homies go hungry. Like I said, community, you're supposed to care about your people. This is something interesting that I said, and I'm glad they brought it up because this is pretty common. If I don't eat, it's because I forgot. Not because of money. I'm very serious about having food and travel money set aside just for that. Yeah, it is quick to forget to eat at a con. I get it. You're so caught up with everything like that. It is super duper quick and it just like leaves your mind. And that is something that more and more people have been discussing. But they're just like, hey, I just simply forgot to eat. It's not like I'm avoiding food on purpose. I just forgot. And then when they finally remember, they go and take care of that. I know a lot of people say that if they are working working for the convention, like if they're a volunteer or doing crew, that is usually how they get food, and they do usually offer food to staff, which is good. Cons do need to do that. Because I know when I go to volunteer at CCAs, they be offering to buy me food and everything when I'm there. And someone said, I always make sure I have money to eat. And I'm glad you do, because that is so dangerous, y'all. Please. And somebody said this. I don't know how you can stomach this, because this makes my stomach turn. But I said I stacked up on noodles, Pepsi, Vienna sausage, and cereal in my suitcase. I cannot survive off of that for a weekend. Y'all built different. And a lot of people say that they try not to skip meals because of health reasons, which valid. Now, as we are just talking about the things that we have to do when it comes to eating, money, we're going back around to the klarna question. I said if a con you wanted to attend offered buy now, pay later option for badges, would you take advantage of it? 58% of people said no. I'm one of the no's here. And 41% of people said yes. And the reason why I say no is because y'all done seen the news lately about people have not been paying Klarna back. They have not been paying Affirm. They've not been paying Klarna. All of these buy now, pay later services have been going bankrupt because the people who are using the services ain't paying them back. Now, I did ask, do you think if cons offered buy now, pay later options for badges, would it do more harm than good? 60% of people said yes, and 39% of people said no. And the reason why I put this here, because I legit want to know y'all reasonings as to why some of y'all think this is a good idea, and some of y'all have some very valid critiques. I'm gonna give it to y'all. Some of y'all have some very valid critiques, and I could see like both sides of this. Because a lot of people were basically saying that they don't want people to feel like they're being priced out of conventions, but also a lot of people were just saying that is going to ruin the con. And I'm gonna sit here and read to you guys a lot of the replies that I got for if you think buy now and pay later will cause problems, why or why not. I feel like it would be a good option to help people with less money secure con badges. It would help people that know they'll have money by the time the con comes around securing a badge, even if they didn't have the money for a badge when they became available for purchase. I don't think so. It would probably be more accessible for a lot of folks if payment plans were available. I think it's really easy way for people to fall into debt over time, especially if you're like me and tend to emotionally buy retail therapy of sorts. I stay away from buy now, pay later options because I'm forgetful and there is no guarantee that I'll have that money later. Ultimately, a convention is not a necessity. People shouldn't spend money that they don't have at a convention. I feel as though it is an expectation that you are going to spend money at a convention, and if you don't have money for the badge, you surely shouldn't be buying anything the convention has to offer. I personally believe buy now, pay later payment options are very financially irresponsible and predatory towards consumers. I get everyone wants some nice things and to have fun, but I don't believe the long-term suffering afterwards is worth it. I think it's way better to encourage con-goers to save up for conventions and be smart with their decisions when spending money at conventions. I think that a lot of people overspend at conventions, and I've seen instances of people prioritizing cons over basic living expenses, rent, utilities, etc. I know that FOMO is annoying, but at the end of the day, if you aren't making money at them, the conventions are a hobby and you should be treating them as such. Buy now, pay later loans have been shown to be predatory, and it's a lot better to either skip a con or find another way to attend. Most cons offer free or discounted tickets if you run panels or volunteer, which is what I used to help so many during the year. I've seen too many videos of people talking about all the debt they're in due to buy now, pay later programs, and I can't support the same predatory financial practices for the cosplay community. Like everything, it fully depends on the person, but having a buy now, pay later option helps make badges accessible to people who might not be able to foot the cost up front as long as they are responsible with their finances and are able to pay for a layaway on top of their other expenses. It would, in my opinion, give companies the chance to up their prices to an insane degree, leading to a buy now, pay later services potentially taking advantage of that. I honestly feel like it could be good for growing and already established cons. The tickets will sell better and it could possibly bring in a lot of things for the con, like guests and more out-of-state performances and such. Maybe even a bigger venue if needed and possibly better accommodations for the attendees for the future. I think that if cons wanted to work, the customer needs to have the ticket paid off by the time of the event. If not, people will be less likely to pay the full amount after the event, especially depending on their experience. It would also make it easier for refunds if needed. I can understand for the con business, but this can be tough to pay the venue, the workers, etc. But the buy now, pay later would make cons way more accessible to nerds that are on a budget, restricted income, etc. People were worrying when DoorDash started offering pay as you go. If conventions do this, I just know people in our community will go in severe debt. People in our community will go into debt over just collecting things, gacha games. If you allow them to pay as you go for cons like Anime Expo, I just know the financial consequences would ruin a lot of people. There are plenty of ways to get a convention badge if you can't afford one. Volunteering, running panels, sometimes entering the cosplay competitions. A convention badge is the baseline thing you need to go to a convention. It always has other costs attached. If you need financial assistance to go to the convention, then you can't afford to go at all. In my opinion, having to use a buy now pay later option implies that you should probably skip that item event. Especially because con crowds skew young, my fear would be young people to potentially damaging their credit for the sake of a weekend. As someone who typically lives paycheck to paycheck, it's easier for me to do multiple small payments than one big one, so being able to pay down a badge over time would be helpful. As someone who racked up a good amount of debt from buy now, pay later services that I now paid off, it's scary. Although they tend to be more forgiving than traditional credit card companies, if you make a mistake, if your life happens, you're screwed. Additionally, cons for me are a luxury, and it's honestly pretty satisfying saving up money for months in advance and having it pay off in an amazing experience. If everything is already accounted for upfront, I don't have the stress of I can really afford this later. However, I'm not a professional cosplayer or a vendor, so I don't need to go to cons for income. It would be a better option to people who want to enjoy the con experience that usually don't get to enjoy it. Cons should be more accessible, and fans shouldn't be priced out of attending due to growing popularity of anime, cosplay, and conventions. Cons have FOMO as one of their key marketing strategies. A lot of people in the social media generation are very susceptible to that tactic, especially younger people who will likely be the main users of the system. It's likely because they usually have a lower income and or no access to alternative and credit cards. They also will feel FOMO more intensely than other groups since they are trying to develop identity and finding in their group in the con scene. Of course, there is the option of volunteering, but that's work as well as other barriers that make it less feasible or attractive. Currently, marketing makes buy now, pay later into a form of instant gratification. It can help ease FOMO, but younger people, teens, and young adults have little experience with credit, finance, and consequences of borrowing. This was a pretty vulnerable survey that I have did in this community. Like, I know we sit here and talk about things that have happened to us in this space, because I did do another survey for that 2-hour long video that I made talking about how y'all are making cosplay and conventions insufferable. But the money discussion, I feel like we just gotta start talking about it a little bit more, especially with some of those replies for the why or why not section. I think I'm just gonna restate what I said in the beginning of this video. No con, no costume is worth going bankrupt over. It is not. None of this is worth going bankrupt over. If you don't have it, just do without. That is just something that I was raised on. That's been something that my family taught me, my aunties taught me, my uncles taught me, my parents taught me. Just do without if you don't have the money for it. As I was talking about how I spent $60 to get Melody's autograph, and the reason I spent that $60 is because I had the money to do that. There have been other voice actors and guests in the past before where I did want to get their autograph, but I didn't have the funds to do so. And when I say I didn't have the funds to do so, I had $40 in my bank account, but I know damn well I had to pay for parking later on. So yeah, I just didn't have it like that. I didn't have it at that time period. You don't have to travel to all these super duper big conventions. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses. And I know people were talking about like, what is ruining the cosplay community? What is ruining like, you know, cons in general. And people have their hot takes on what they think is messing things up. But there was somebody I follow and they basically said that they feel like fast fashion is ruining it. And I was like, you know what? That might actually be the most valid thing I've heard of this. You do not need a new costume every single time there's something new that comes out. And this is a big discussion that has been happening with K-pop demon hunters, because I talked about this in my video where I was talking about how there's been a bunch of fandom drama with K-pop demon hunters and the movie only been out for 2 weeks. I did talk about this a bit in my video where I was talking about the hot takes for K-pop demon hunters. But I think the fast fashion and cosplay discussion is really big with this one movie, because as soon as it came out, a lot of people were rushing to be the first to do this look, cosplay this character, do this thing, and they ended up doing so many insensitive things. They weren't doing research on the characters, they weren't doing research on the culture, they were doing insensitive things for the sake of wanting to cosplay from this film, and whew, it was not looking good. And I noticed that right away there were, you know, the doki doki, the micro costumes, you know, the typical fast fashion cosplay brands that we have out here. They were so quick to go ahead and throw these costumes out. And 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna be honest, y'all, when it comes to buying like ready-made costumes, and a lot of these are like fast fashion brands, the costumes are usually terrible. They're not usually all that great, and you're probably gonna have to take them and alter them yourself, because I always talk about like essentials that I think cosplayers should have, because I think it would save them a ton of money, especially because these are like common things that are used in costumes. I think black ties are commonly used. I think white button-up shirts are commonly used. I think a good pair of black slacks are commonly used. Like boots, like black boots, like there's just certain basics that I think every cosplayer should have, and that's mainly for the sake of being able to save money, because you can rotate these items with different costumes. But I bought the Wednesday school uniform, the Nevermore costume, and I didn't want to, but I needed it at the last minute because I got invited to the special Wednesday screening, and I was just so dissatisfied with the quality of that costume. And it wasn't necessarily the blazer, it wasn't necessarily the skirt that came with it. It was them basically trying to make a cheap ass imitation of the sweater, the shirt, and the tie that goes with it. Like, I can literally show y'all that shit. It's so ugly and it pissed me off. Okay, y'all, I found this ugly ass thing, but this, what is this? It's supposed to be a tie. There is no tie. It's just sewed on. This is supposed to be like a white button-up shirt, and then there was a sweater that went over it. By the way, I didn't wear a sweater with it because it's hot ass Georgia heat. I was not doing that. It's just very cheaply made, but people are still going to buy these and still wear them because they want to have the newest, hottest thing out here. When I'm gonna be honest, you can get a tie and a button-up shirt for probably like $6 at your local Goodwill. This is why I always tell people to utilize the thrift store when it comes to saving money in cosplay. And usually, like I said, the quality of these fast fashion costumes, they're just really terrible, because I said that the blazer and the skirt, they were decent. This is just terrible. It would easily rip if I just do this to it. Oof, this is a long one. I don't even know where to go with all of this. It's just, with the way our country has been going this year, and just talking about finances in general is very stressful. But I feel like we just got to start having more open discussions about how a lot of us are not necessarily in situations where we can keep buying new costumes all the time, or not even like buying new costumes, like buying like ready-made expensive costumes. Like, take materials that you already have and upcycle them. There have been times where I've taken things from old costumes of mine and made them into something new. Like that dress I wore for Elsa, I used that same dress when I did Shave and Beauty. Save money, live better. I know a lot of people have this, we're not here to pay bills and, you know, work. I get that. I understand that we should do things that we enjoy. I get that. But also at the same time, being in constant debt is something that is very much normalized. And I'm gonna be honest, I blame Carrie Bradshaw for this. I most definitely blame Carrie Bradshaw's ass for this shit. Because one of the major things about Sex and the City is that Carrie Bradshaw is broke, but she is always trying to make it seem like she is not broke. She has how many credit card bills that are extremely overdue? She always trying to depend on other people for money. Like, Carrie Bradshaw tries to flex and act like she got it like that, but she most definitely does not, especially on that salary that I know they offering her, the girl just doesn't have money that way, but she tries to present like she does. And that happens in the cosplay community so much. And not even just in the cosplay community, just any type of subculture. Because somebody even said this to me about the tabletop game community has this problem too just as well. Gacha game community has this problem just as well. And that's the reason why I haven't played Love in Deep Space since my ass got beat the fuck up when I was fighting with Stylus. Gacha games cost money. Well, yes, I do think people should go and have fun, but if you know you only have $500 in your bank account for the next 3 weeks, it's more wise to go to that con that's probably going to cost you about $200 than that other con that's going to cost you $600. Like, I do want people to enjoy life. I do people want to go out and have fun, but I also think we need to be a little bit more wise with our financial decisions. And while, yeah, people in their late teens and early 20s make bad money choices all the time. I'm guilty of it. We all know this. Plenty of us have stories of how we spent our money in poor ways at that age. But I feel like when we are getting older and older, we cannot afford to keep making these mistakes. We can't keep affording to make these mistakes because we're gonna have to pay more and more back for them. Like, yeah, I'm gonna sit here and care about people not paying their bills to go to a con because these are the same people that are coming directly to the community for help. Like, yeah, I'm gonna sit here and help you because we are in community with each other, but we can't have this be a recurring problem. And I know a lot of people have realized that, where they had like a few little mess ups here and there, but they were like, yeah, I learned my lesson, I'm not gonna do that again. A lot of these people don't do that. I don't know. I just want to have this video is long enough. And I feel like we talked a lot about money today. We talked quite a lot about it. I'm kind of tired of this discussion. I need a little break. But thank y'all for watching this video. I deeply appreciate it. And because we talked about money today, I'm not even going to promote anything at the end of this because I don't know. It just kind of feels a little out of place too. Yeah, this is just something, a topic that was just very much long overdue. I wanted to get this video out earlier this summer, but life kept getting in the way. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope this video gave y'all some food for thought. Please be wise about your spending choices. And the main reason I say that is because layoffs are happening left and right. Ain't nothing promised in this economy right now. It's scary out here. I know we want to have a good time. I know we want to have fun. But are you really gonna risk 3 days of fun to be struggling for the next 2 months, y'all? Like, let's just think a little bit. Just think about it a little bit. Like, I like having fun, but I hate being in debt more. All right, y'all. I'm gonna cut it off here. I'll talk to y'all later. Goodbye. Now that you see, you should beware of the power of 3. They come to fight as fast as they can. They're dangerous yet fabulous. Because the Utonium made them eschew. They are the colors of pink, green, and blue. They'll catch you in the blink of an eye and do it all before bedtime. They coming through and fighting, and everyone they shocking. You know no one can stop them all because of the chemical X. They coming through, they coming through, and everyone they shocking. You know no one can stop them all because of the chemical X. The Powerpuff Girls will just blow your mind. Buttercup fight villains 3 at a time. Bubbles will smile while kicking your butt, and Blossom will lead them out of their rut. Cherish and Powerpuff, 2 of a kind. Both wanna save the world before bedtime. From Townsville, Memphis, New York to LA, the Powerpuff Girls are just here to stay.